Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. I'm Cindy Daychek with Queen Bee Creations, and today, for me, it's a scary craft because it's a sewing craft. And if you follow me, you know I'm not a sewer. I fake it, but I don't necessarily fake it well. But I had this idea. So it's winter here in Canada, and I'm in kind of this really big kind of warehousey space. I don't know how tall my ceilings are, 20 feet, maybe 6, 18, oh, maybe 25 feet. They're tall. So it's warm enough, but it gets kind of chilly. And so I've often joked about, oh, I should just bring a blanket in and just wrap myself in it. And I can ditch it when customers come in, but when they're not, I can just be wrapped up in a blanket like my own little cocoon. But then I started to think about it and I thought, why couldn't I wear a blanket? It's just the way my mind works, guys. So I thought, well, maybe I'll thrift a blanket and see what I can do. So here's what I'm thinking. I thrifted this Eddie Bauer blanket. Now it's got the fluffy lining. It's got, kind of the Canadian plaid. Like, this is like so Canadian. It's like two ply. It would have been easier if I got one that wasn't, but I just love this. This is from Eddie Bauer. And what I decided that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn this into a long wraparound vest. So I'm not doing arms, I'm not doing sleeves because nightmare. But I'm gonna be putting holes in it and sewing up holes. That seemed to, maybe figuring out how to do buttons. I don't have like a button hole or foot on my sewing machine. I know there's a thing that you can attach and I don't have that. And if I did have it, I wouldn't know what to do with it. So I'm gonna fake my buttonholes. So really, this is something I'm making for me, in which case it's okay, but I hope that it shows you that it's okay to just mess around too. And hopefully it turns out okay, in which case then it's an even bigger reason to just kind of mess around. But in my head, it looks really good. So what I have done is I have measured out this blanket, and it is 48 inches by 60 inches. So I'm gonna take the 60 inches as being my body, right? So that's gonna be the wraparound length, and the 48 inches is gonna be the tall parts of the body. And what I liked about having the insert, apart from, we're gonna leave all this piping, the edging, which is, I think, gonna be cute, is that we're actually gonna have this part, that flop down part, as kind of like the upper shawl area. So what I did was I did some of the math, and I took just a measuring stick across my shoulders. I wanted to leave enough space for how much width do I need, and I figured I needed about 19 inches. It would extend past my shoulders. I'd originally thought, so let me show you, this is my picture of my blanket. I'd originally thought that I would cut the piece into 3 and sew up, leave holes for the arms. And then I decided that seemed like a lot of work. Instead, I thought, well, you know what? What if I just measured out and I cut the holes for the arms and I just sew those closed, right? So I cut the slit, I turn in the edges, I sew them closed, and it just leaves a bigger armhole, but then we'll have nice finished edges. So I wanted to leave 12 inches at the top for the turn down part, right? To kind of make like that upper shawl piece. And I decided I don't necessarily have to have slits because I think it's wide enough. We'll see. I'm gonna save that. So it was like 24 inches from the bottom, I'll measure, and 20.5 inches. So 20 inches in from the sides, and then I'll cut my slits for my arms. So I did kind of measure things out. So I don't want you to think that this is totally without planning or forethought, because there was thought happening. So that what I'm looking at is I'm going to get my pins out. I'm going to measure this. I want to have my little Eddie Bauer on the bottom. So I'm going to measure my kind of try and get this all sort of laying flat so that I don't inadvertently put ripples into it. I'm going to measure 20 inches across and 24 inches up, and I'm going to pin that because that's going to be the bottom of a sleeve hole. Then 12 inches up and pin that because that's going to be the top of a sleeve hole. And I'm going to do it on the other side so that I have my two, I'm saying sleeve, but really it's just arm because we're not doing sleeves. But that's where I'm going to cut. That's going to be my cut marks from one to the other. And then I will break out the sewing machine, see if I remember how to thread it. See, it's really, I'm thinking I just have to do straight lines, so I might be okay with this. I hope it works because it looks really cool in my head. So all that I'm going to do off camera is I'm doing my measuring, the 20 inches in, the 24 inches up, 12 inches up. I'm going to do my two little pins, and then we'll come back and we'll cut and start to sew together. And then we figure out buttons. I went through my stash of buttons and I had two of these big creamy ones, which kind of work with it, right? It kind of goes, because I'll need one on the inside and then one on the outside, because we're gonna crisscross up here and that's gonna hold it, and then the rest just opens. You'll see what I mean. If I make it work, you'll see what I mean. First, let's worry about armholes, which is the biggest issue with this. Okay, fingers crossed, guys. I'm gonna measure, I'm gonna pin, and dig out the sewing machine from the bowels of the shop here. Oh, I've wanted to do this for a while and I kept putting it off because sewing intimidates me. But you know what? If we don't do things that scare us, then we don't grow and we don't learn. I'm not sure how much learning I do, since I don't follow any patterns or anything. I just make stuff up. So I think that inhibits my ability to learn the actual sewing part. But if it gets me through with projects that I think up, then it falls into the good enough category for me. So I decided to go with 10 inches instead. It just seemed big enough for my arm and my shoulder. So what I did do, I have my two pins marking the top and the bottom, but I also put two black dots that will be my sew lines. And I don't think you're gonna see them. I mean, not my sew lines, my cut lines. And I'm gonna cut between here and here. And then we're going to attempt to sew them. So really it came down to 24 inches from the bottom, 10 inches here, and then I have maybe 14 inches from the top to the shoulder as well. And I think that the extra 2 inches is going to be a plus at the top. Oh, in my head, which is a scary place for anything to be, it works out fine. We'll see. Now, before I start doing any sewing, what I am trying to do is, now that my slit is cut, there's no going back now, is to just fold in that cut edge of both the top and the bottom fabrics so that I can, I don't have the hottest iron here, but so that I can sew those edges together and I won't have any fraying. The other thing that I'll have to do is sew along that little bottom just so that I don't have it splitting anymore as well. But I want to get this ironed down a bit so that it will perhaps help me sew it together better. And now the big test for me is whether I can actually manage to sew this together or not. Now that I have the arms sewn, the holes, and 10 inches was a good size. Could have gone 12, would have been okay. This is kind of the idea. I have one side pulled across, right? And just kind of tucked in. This is thick enough, it's gonna stay. I'm not worried about a second button. I thought I might, but I'm not going to. And then here is where I'm thinking I need to mark. So I need, ouch, a buttonhole in there and a button just about there. Very exact science, isn't it? So I just need to make sure that I know which is which. So this is going to be where my buttonhole goes. So I'm just double pinning it so that I know that that's the hole. And I'm just going to do, I'm going to dig the sewing machine out one more time, and I'm going to do exactly what I did for, there we go, for the sleeves. I'm just going to cut a hole. This is fairly stretchy fabric, I think, so not too big, but I'm going to cut a hole here that would allow my button to pass through, and I'm going to sew up the edges on the sewing machine, and then I'm just going to hand sew my button onto the other side and be done, and then I'll show you the whole thing. I'm just happy I managed to get armholes, so far I'm good. Well, and here's our blanket. I don't know what made me think about creating something that allowed me to wear my blanket, but you know what? Sometimes, oh, sorry, caught that on my sleeve. Sometimes you just have to kind of give free rein and kind of go. So this is what it's like undone. And then we just tuck, and I haven't actually even tried this yet. And we just pop our little button in, and then that's it together. Now, mine is a very kind of heavy 2-ply blanket. You could do, this is me modeling. You could do something similar with a lighter weight blanket and instead just do your armholes, and then you could belt it rather than doing the clasp up at the top. I like being cozy up top. I mean, you know, you could hood it if you wanted. Because it was double-sided, I had a little flexibility, but I gotta tell you guys, I'm kind of digging it. And is my sewing the best? No. Can you really tell? No, not enough that it matters to me. And again, this was for me. I'm not looking at it being perfect because I'm gonna sell it, although, gee, take the idea, run with it if you can sew. You know, not the best buttonholes, but you can't see them anyway, so who cares? At the end of the day, give it a try. I paid $8 for the blanket. The button I had in a stash. I used some thread. There was zero cost. So if worse came to worse and I messed it up, then I just have fabric to use for other projects. It wasn't going to be a big deal. It wasn't going to be a hardship. And so sometimes just jump in, give things a go. Maybe you end up with something that's warm and cozy and that you love. Let me know what you think of this one, guys. It's obviously a super quick, super easy project if you give it a try. Tons of different ways to go about this. Love to hear your thoughts and ideas as always, and certainly look forward to seeing you on the next one. Until then, take care.